Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Are you here with me? Yes. I am Felipe Stefan. I am a fellow at the Schoenstein Center at Harvard and also the founder of a new impact investment fund for independent production companies at the intersection of social impact and commerciality that is going to be called Curiosity Capital. And I am delighted to be your moderator for this session. Thank you so much for being here on this morning to talk about things that some other people think are boring. But they're not. They really are not. They are incredibly important. And so that's why this panel is called Proof, Not Promises. For those of us, as I'm sure many of you who have been in this space for a long time know, those of us who are in filmmaking, culture change, narrative power, however you want to call the space, there's a lot of conversations about both the power of stories and also the lack of evidence that sometimes we have to be able to really illustrate that power. And that is a systematic issue in our field for a variety of reasons, partly because, as I can tell you from experience, having implemented some of those programs myself, sometimes without evidence, we may not know that the stories that we are putting out in the world are actually having the very opposite effect that we wish that they had. I often tell the story that I'm an executive producer in a film called Apocalypse in the Tropics that is on Netflix. And we worked in that film for 5 years. I'm really delighted that it went to Netflix. Actually, is there someone from Netflix in the room? Before I say what I'm about to say. So happy. Thank you, Netflix, so much. We appreciate you so much. If you are a secret Netflix spy and you didn't tell me, shame on you. But I will never know how many people watched our film. I will never know if they clicked and interrupted. Will never know what countries they're in. I will never know if it transformed the way that they thought about democracy in Brazil or around the world. And so if we are serious about being in the business of narrative change and culture change, we need information. We can't be flying these planes blindfolded. And so we have the most incredible people that have that information and that have done actual, serious, detailed, sophisticated work to get that information. And they're here to tell you a little bit more about that. And I'm just going to introduce them in a moment. But just so you know, the roadmap for this session is that Joanna, Victor, and Cece are going to present each. And they're going to tell you about how they've been thinking about proof. And then I'm going to ask them a couple questions. I'll be really brief on those because I really want this to be a conversation, and then I'm just going to open it up to you. And so I'm going to do my very best to make sure that the Q&A is as long as possible and that we get to your questions. So with that, I want to introduce Joanna Blakely, who is Managing Director at the Norman Lear Center. She has done incredible work. I was very happy to work with the center on some work that we did together at the intersection of narrative change and tech accountability. Then there is Victor Orozco from the World Bank, who is leading the program. Exactly the name of the program is on edutainment, and I should be looking at my notes.
Called Narrating Behavior Change or Edutainment.
Great. And then we have Cece, Senior Officer at Women in Film.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Working on the International Programs Department. And so that's a completely new department if you've heard of Women in Film or WIF. So, yeah.
And with that, let's get started. So we'll start with you, Joanna.
All right. Thank you, Felipe. I'm really happy to be here. My first Sundance. Is this, yeah, good enough? So great to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the entire model at the Norman Lear Center, which is based at the University of Southern California at the Annenberg School. So it won't be a surprise that, yes, we do research. We're a bunch of nerdy academics. So we're doing really nerdy research on the social impact of entertainment and media, which is kind of a new field in academia. So it's been a battle to get this to be taken seriously. But now I think we're very much over the hump, in part because of the work that organizations like Victor's does. So we do all this nerdy research, but the other half of our operation is a Hollywood outreach operation, where we operationalize everything that we've learned from the research, and we help screenwriters write accurate storylines about important social topics and health topics. And we help them do it in such a way that it really influences knowledge, attitudes, and behavior. So I have a clip reel that we just put together because we've been working with a lot of shows over the years. We've consulted on 2,500 storylines that have aired around the world so far. 2,500. We've consulted on every episode of Grey's Anatomy, which is still a big blockbuster around the world. People are watching it everywhere. We're talking billions of eyeballs. Every episode of House, and now every episode of The Pit. How many of you have watched The Pit? New show, considered extremely accurate, winning a whole bunch of awards, and it's about an emergency room in Pittsburgh that's just always under siege. And it's very much about the systemic issues that cause these problems within the healthcare system, which usually doesn't get covered in these kinds of shows. So I've got a clip reel that explains how it is that we work with shows and the results from the research that we just did on storylines on The Pit. So if you could roll the video.
I've known anecdotally the influence the storylines can have over lives, going back 30 years to when we did ER storylines, the power of television and the power of storytelling. So in this venture, it was really that much more significant to us to meet with experts, get our facts and figures correct.
We try to be accurate and current in any medical topic that we cover. Our primary job is to tell great, compelling, complex, emotional stories, but our commitment to accuracy has this wonderful side effect to educate not only the public, but professional audiences as well. We've had doctors write to us and say they've recognized a case of measles or a case of methemoglobinemia because of something that they saw. And more importantly, emergency personnel have talked about recognizing their own post-traumatic stress from COVID and from overcrowding and the stresses of emergency medicine in 2025, and have in fact sought help based on stories that they've seen.
It's really meaningful, and I also love being on something that makes the whole medical community really feel seen and appreciated, and they're just pushed to their limits right now. So I'm just grateful that I can bring that.
When I'm asked what the idea of the Norman Lear Center is, I have a two-word answer. Stories matter.
For 25 years, Hollywood Health and Society has been a go-to resource for TV writers to get factual information and connect with experts on the front lines of health, medicine, and science.
This organization has been instrumental in getting us, a lot of the kudos that we're enjoying.
The work of the Norman Lear Center's research arm, the Media Impact Project, that collects quantitative and qualitative actual data on the impact that your shows have.
We work on a range of topics from health equity to climate and sustainability to mental health, representations of historically excluded communities. We found that these authentic storylines really resonated with medical professionals. They made them feel validated, feel seen, particularly in the depiction of the hidden factors that we don't often see in medicine and the attention to these systemic challenges. We found that 1 in 4 viewers who saw the organ donation storyline said that they actually sought more information about organ donation. And over a third of viewers of the end-of-life storyline sought more information about end-of-life planning. And that's 2 to 3 times as often as those who did not see those storylines.
We've always known anecdotally through social media postings that people have, in fact, responded in very big, meaningful ways.
It's truly, truly incredible, especially when you put so much of your life and so much hard work into doing the research and really trying to tell accurate and authentic stories. We're creating art, but to have this kind of real life impact is just, it's mind-blowing. And, if it has any positive resonance, especially in this time in our society, it's bonus.
I think it's fantastic that they did the study to get computational data on it.
All of these things that in society have a domino effect and always trickle down into the ER. And that is someplace, because of our show, we're able to highlight all of these issues that seem sometimes non-typical for a medical drama.
And we're doubly blessed to have a show that's been successful. Our first job is always to entertain, but when you have a format that allows you to reach millions of people every week, that comes with a certain amount of responsibility, and we take that to heart.
Change the narrative, change the world.
Great.
I know, a fresh little summary of what's been going on in our lives. Go ahead and sit down if you like. I'll just stand up because I've got some slides coming up here. You may be wondering why it is that fictional storytelling is so effective at this. Why not make a documentary or put a news program together? Well, it turns out that storytelling is quite sneaky, and it can sneak past the defenses and the counter-arguing that we tend to posture when somebody is trying to convince us of something. So fiction is a really great way to invite an audience to lean back and just think about the world in a slightly different way. Also, there's some very complex psychological processes that take place when you're imbibing in story. There's one thing that we actually measure quantitatively: transportation into the story, narrative immersion. We've come up with ways to actually quantify that. You can even see it in an fMRI reading of your brain when you're immersed in a story. This is biological. And also, of course, identifying with characters and the emotional response to stories. All of these factors contribute to the likelihood that you'll learn things, that you might change your attitude about something, and that you might actually live your life a little bit differently because of a story you saw. So we did this for 10 years in Hollywood and decided, we should really make this a global operation. And so we took our model to Nigeria, to India, also to Colombia. We dabbled in Mexico a little bit. It's all about funding, but we consulted on hundreds of storylines with local partners on the ground, sort of helping them scale up their operations, working with the industries that are soon, competing in size with Hollywood. Nigeria has the second largest film industry in the world right now. And so we've worked on films and TV shows and, of course, done the impact studies like the one that you heard about in this reel in order to figure out whether storylines about gender-based violence, immunizations, family planning are actually working on the audiences that are seeing them. Could I have the last slide? It's just a little summary of what I'm hoping you kind of take away from this presentation, what the Lear Center does. We're making the argument that engaging directly with the commercial entertainment industry works. They are open to it, and they will actually tell more accurate and authentic stories if they have some services to support their work. It's cost effective opposed to making the entertainment ourselves, and it's a proven pathway to social impact, just in part because the audiences are massive. And then creating a global alliance among all these different entertainment hubs around the world, it is the next logical step, especially in this historical moment. We have very, very big challenges to face. They are global. So working together across industries and with storytellers from different worlds is really the best move forward. So thank you so much.
Give it up for Joanna. Thank you so much. Okay, we're gonna move on to Victor.
Thanks, Felipe. So the world faces multiple challenges, global challenges. For example, worldwide, 1 out of 3 women have experienced violence in their life. Last year, there were 1.3 new HIV infections in the world. So to combat these global challenges, we also need global solutions, scalable, cost-effective solutions. And I think entertainment media, as Joanna is showing, could be one of such global solutions. So over a decade ago, I launched in the World Bank the research program on the use of entertainment media for social impact. We work with policymakers, academics, but also media firms such as MTV, Discovery, Facebook, social influencers, in the main entertainment hubs of the world, Nigeria, Kenya, India, Mexico, that produce for large markets, but also produce for the respective regions. And the goal of this program is to produce research, but also organize these policymaker industry events to normalize something that makes sense to you all, right? Which is humans are complex. So information-only formats is not gonna lead to changing attitudes and behaviors. You need the power of storytelling, of role models, of entertainment to do so. And well, we've been testing TV dramas, gamified apps, chatbots, social influencer campaigns across different fields, but mostly on gender and human development. Slides, please. Okay, so the question is, it makes a lot of sense that stories will change attitudes and behaviors, but do they actually do? So we run randomized controlled trials, which use the same methodologies of clinical trials, where you randomize individuals or groups to treatment and control, where what you study, what you measure, is the causal effect that could be fully attributed to your treatment, to your show. It's not correlational, it's not contribution, it's pure causality. And these studies show the potential that storytelling can have, but also the potential risks. So the first study I'll be showing results for is called MTV Sugar, a television drama produced by MTV Staying Alive Foundation that brings the top talent of Africa. It's a show like, say, Friends, but with a lot of sex and rock and roll. And to also hide a lot of these more educational HIV and gender-based violence messages. And well, for example, Lupita Nyong'o was one of the actors in the early seasons. Another show is My Better World, produced by Impacted International, formerly the Discovery Learning Alliance. They combine documentaries with aspirational role models with animations to talk about a lot of the sensitive issues, such as girl education, teenage marriage in very traditional settings. This study took place in northern Nigeria, where Sharia law is actually the law of the land, where half of kids don't go to school, primary school, right? So the question is, will entertainment media, would edutainment actually change attitudes and behaviors in such challenging environments? And the third study comes from Mexico. It's an interactive movie aimed at reducing teenager addictions or preventing addictions. It's an interactive movie shown in movie theaters and in schools across the country, but also in other countries. If you could put the video, please. It's for My Better World.
Hi, my name is Abby. Welcome to My Better World. My friends and I are always discovering things about our lives,
finding ways to help us understand the world around us.
Master of the universe.
Show us your talents ready.
Well done.
Math is so hard for me.
When you work hard, you will achieve whatever you want to achieve.
I was the only female out of over 100 students.
If I can be focused and I'm willing to pay the price, I'll get it.
That boy can fix anything.
Yeah, Rosa. Show us what you got.
Do it. It's fun.
Well done, Abby.
It really shows what we can do when we work together to make a difference.
Yes! Yes! Welcome to My Better World.
Thank you. So this production won an International Emmy Award a few years ago in the Kids and Education category. And just to clarify, I'm just a boring researcher. I had nothing to do with the production. Okay, now to the results. So for MTV Sugar, after 10 months, watching just a season, which lasted for 3 hours, we see that the show doubled HIV testing and reduced chlamydia infections by half, both not self-reported but objective measures of behavior change. The show also reduced the likelihood by 1/3 for experiencing sexual violence among our viewers. Now, these already very big effects were even bigger for those viewers that reported greater program transportation and greater character identification, showing that the mechanisms of storytelling, right, are driving behavior change. In the case of My Better World, after 3 years of watching these community screenings, which were organized on 2 weekends for a total of 8 hours of screenings and post-screening discussions, so very low dosages, 3 years after these community screenings, we see that there's still a 13% higher attendance in the treatment group with respect to the control group. But also we see that these community screenings of My Better World reduced 18% teenage marriage and teenage pregnancy in northern Nigeria. Big effects. Now, the third study offers a cautionary tale about edutainment, right? So while this interactive movie was effective in raising awareness about the risks of consuming drugs, it inadvertently increased consumption of alcohol and tobacco among middle schoolers in Mexico, right? The messaging was too explicit. So, teenagers, in general, nobody likes to be, preached at, much less teenagers, much less teenager boys. So I think this is one of the reasons. We can take the slides off, please. Now, these are really big results, but also I'm going to give you some numbers showing that they're very smart investments. So using very conservative assumptions, we see that for every dollar invested in MTV Sugar, there were $150 in social returns in the form of lifetime earnings for viewers that got tested and started HIV treatment, right? So big effects, big social returns. For the case of My Better World, when we combined it with a reinforcer intervention where we gave gamified apps to teach how to read, this combined intervention ranked in the top 10% in terms of learning aids worldwide, right? So very smart, investments. So just to conclude, these studies, these randomized controlled trials are showing that they're very effective, right? These formats when they're well done. But at the same time, this sector remains a sector of one-offs. Even successful cases like MTV Sugar, My Better World have troubles finding funding for their next seasons, right? So there's a need for more systematic, scalable partnerships within the public sector, within the private sector, but also a bridge between both sectors to produce more of such interventions, because again, the global challenges are quite big. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you for making that linkage between this kind of information and data and the ability to bring investment into the space. I think one of the things that at least for me personally has helped me unlock a lot of helpful, interesting thinking around getting capital and resourcing into the space is the idea of capital not just as financial capital, but really that many of us who are in the space of storytelling and social impact take financial capital and transform it into not just money, even though we also do that, but into also social and cultural capital. And beyond that, that generates the kinds of results that Victor was speaking to, as well as economic impacts that come from employment for the folks that are able to create the stories. And so sometimes I feel like we end up in conversations with investors and funders that are so narrowly framed in like, if I give you this much money, like for how much will your movie or TV show sell? And actually the more interesting conversation is a conversation that thinks about that much more expansively with an understanding of returns that includes financial but is not limited to that. So thank you, Victor, and thank you for being the kind of World Bank officer that speaks about sex and rock and roll. I appreciate it. It was not like that when I worked there, so I'm glad you made it. Cece, let's move on to you.
Of course. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. So let me start with a simple truth. Stories don't change cultures by accident. They change because of who gets to tell these stories and what stories are told and how. And what I'm about to present is work that we've been doing over the course of 2 years. The International Department at Women in Film is a newer department. And when we talk about gender equity in film, we often stop at what audiences see on screen. But our research and really this global industry data that we're looking at shows on-camera representation without behind-the-camera inclusion is actually fragile. So in this first slide, Women in Film, we have integrated 3 lenses to be able to do this research. The first one is on-camera representation, which looks at visibility, agency, portrayal, which a lot of us talk about when we talk about gender equity. The second part is stories and themes, which we have an idea about, but we take it a step further when we talk about depth, accountability, and impact. And then the third part, which everyone likes to not talk about that often, is behind the camera gender inclusion. Who holds power? And so, why is behind the camera important? Because the people making the decisions, the directors, the writers, the editors, the producers, they determine whether a woman has agency or symbolism. They determine whether gender-based violence is handled responsibly or sensationalized. They also determine whether empowerment feels authentic or performative. And so in this first slide, what we have done is we created the reframe stamp, which is actually founded by the Sundance Institute and Women in Film. It is one where we're not just rewarding intention, we're actually measuring hiring practices across productions. This is something we were able to do with projects like Wicked, with I think the top 100 films that came out in 2024 and 2025. We were able to look at them and say, who's actually holding the power in these productions? How do these films get told, get made? And what we learned is the data is very clear. Gender balanced productions don't just reflect equity, they actually outperform financially and culturally. So the real question here is, who shapes the story, shapes the world? And if the narrative is the vehicle for social change, behind the camera is actually the engine. And so when narrative is treated as an investment vehicle, behind the camera inclusion becomes a measurable driver of impact, not just a nice to have. So I'm gonna ask you questions throughout my presentation for you to think about. My first question is, what happens when we fund, quote unquote, strong female stories without asking who controls the creative decision? So the next area, next slide please, that I want to go into is something we've been able to do, which is infrastructure as an intervention. Again, I said this work for us is global. It's not just about America, but we're using a global approach so that we can then go into the different regions that we have chapters in and then make a change. And so the first thing we see is that the stories don't exist in the vacuum, right? There is an ecosystem, gatekeepers, budgets, hiring pipelines, and access to power. And those systems ultimately determine whether impact is scalable or whether it's extractive. And so these systems honestly usually exclude women because as a society, we've created this engine of excluding women in positions of power. And so what Women in Film has done is we have been able to invest in infrastructure by creating multiple chapters. We've been able to do this across Africa. We have about 13 chapters and growing in the past 2 years. And what we've done is 3 important things. One, we're organizing local industries. So by coming in, understanding where's your industry, what do you need, where are you stuck at, and supporting the women there to form their own Women in Film chapters, which are independent chapters, excluded from ours but supported by us. The second thing we do is building pipelines. So you can build a chapter, but like, what happens next? Who do I need to talk to? Who do I need to know? So we're building those pipelines by connecting filmmakers to mentors, to producers, to funders, etc. We've been able to do that in 2 different initiatives. One is something called African Creative Market, which is a conference that we hold with the different cross sectors in the creative economy across Africa. Last year, we were able to have over 9,000 people across 3 days. And these are businesses across the African continent who know that the creative economy has power and impact, but don't know where to begin. Another way that we were able to do this is also, we're co-developing a co-production summit with New Zealand and India, because our work is not just in Africa, it's across the globe as well. And then the last thing is we are launching a digital platform by being able to say, okay, you have the connections, you have the chapters, but how do you get connected across the world? How do you keep this system moving with the modern world? So we're actually launching something that is, I say, IMDb and LinkedIn had a baby. Sorry if anyone from IMDb or LinkedIn is here. But understanding that we're working in regions, and from a global perspective, not everyone has access to IMDb. Not everyone understands IMDb. How do we get down to your level, use the resources we've been able to create to bring you into this global space? And so most importantly, I think one of the things we found with these intervention points is filmmakers, like being able to support filmmakers before the script is locked is an important factor. Being able to support productions before hiring decisions are finalized is important. And honestly, being able to support funders before the capital is deployed is extremely important. And so what we've realized is that our interventions need to outlive any single film. We're not just backing stories. We're actually de-risking the ecosystem that produce them. And we're not just speaking about stories, we're focused on the systems that, decide which stories survive. So again, my questions. What if infrastructure, not just content, was considered a narrative change strategy? And who holds power in these local industries when the funders leave? So again, it's not about the individual story, but it is about the ecosystems that these stories live in. So let me close with this. And that's next slide, please. We're already seeing the data come through. This is the model, the approach that I started with: on camera, script and story, and behind the camera, the crew. And we were able to do research in specifically 2 countries, Nigeria and Kenya. We reviewed over 150 films, analyzed them, watched them, talked to their filmmakers, etc. And we realized a couple of patterns that really affect the work that we're talking about today. One is women are visible but not empowered. So we're seeing a lot of female characters appear frequently, which I'm sure you can see in our media today, but yet there's lacking decision-making power or narrative consequence, right? The second thing is gender themes are present, but shallow. There are not enough experts who are in there, and I really love the work that you all have been able to do with the pit, because that's what we need. We need people who are experts really working together with the storytellers to get those points across. And the last thing is the behind-the-camera gaps explain the problem. When women are absent from directing, they're absent from writing, they're absent from those critical creative decision-making, they become symbolic rather than transformative. And so this is why we have actually developed a solution, and I'm happy to present it here. It's a pre-funding evaluation framework for funders. And what we've done is we have designed this framework to be used before money is committed. We're asking certain questions. Who drives the story? So that our funders understand what they're buying into. Who controls hiring, budgets, and creative authority? How is agency portrayed? And what thematic and narrative considerations shape impact from the start? Because the most powerful moment for change isn't after release, it's actually at the point of investment, where proof replaces promises. And so again, my questions. Are we financing representation or building systems that sustain equity? What would change if every funding decision evaluated behind the camera inclusion with the same rigor as budgets and timelines? And so, what I just want to say is when we invest in women and when we invest in women behind the camera, we're not just changing the stories, but we're actually building ecosystems. And when we position women to succeed, not by quota, but by design, that is when creators actually change lives and change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Cece. Thank you for pushing us to think beyond representation. Representation is an important marker, but an insufficient one. And also thank you for helping us think about rootedness in place and the importance of impact of stories as they're rooted in place. I think one mistake that is often made in this space is that we think, well, I would really love for people to think more like this. And then if I can just come up with like the best story, I'm sure I'll convince them. And it is almost like we're assuming people are empty vessels. And if we just like pour the right liquid into the vessel, then everything will be solved. When actually all of us have thoughts, preconceived notions, value systems that are informing how we're consuming content. But very seldom there is actual understanding and data that comes in about the audiences that we want to reach prior to the production of content. And so with that, let me do a very quick round of questions, and then I'm going to open it up to all of you. And Joanne, I want to start with you because you were talking about the connection between commercial and impact. And I think that you were hearing me say yesterday there is this binary, this false binary, this like very hard line where some people who think of themselves as being in a purely commercial space think that what they do has nothing to do with social impact, even though, of course, it does. And some people that are in the social impact space think that anything that has to do with commercial is kind of dirty and bad.
Dirty is the word, yeah.
Yeah. But you clearly have shown that when we actually break that barrier, a lot of interesting things can happen. So I'm curious, how do we break that barrier, and what have you learned about doing so?
It's about diplomacy. It was an uphill battle for us to really get established as an intermediary between experts and the Hollywood entertainment industry, because the entertainment education model as we've known it had always been global and had always been deployed outside of the US, where we have truly empty vessels that need our Western knowledge in order to understand the world. But in America, we all think for ourselves, and we don't need messaging in our entertainment in order to teach us about immunizations and about chlamydia. Turns out, yes, we do. And it turns out that even in an industry that prides itself with First Amendment protections and and really a commitment to shareholders who want entertaining content that's going to make money, that they realize that actually telling authentic stories is a winning strategy for telling commercially successful stories. This is not a surprise to people who come to Sundance, but to people who don't come to Sundance, maybe a surprise. So it was a little bit of a battle to actually make this happen, and I was frankly surprised at how quickly the uptake took place in Hollywood. And partly, maybe the main reason that we were kind of embedded into the industry as quickly as we was because the Writers Guild signed on as the president of our board. So we were positioned as being embedded within the industry as a tool for them to use to tell better stories.
Mm-hmm. That is so fascinating, because I had a similar experience doing a project in Mexico. We were going to offer consultants that were experts on LGBT and gender representation, really mindful of nuance, not just of representation as like a rubber stamp, but like how are these characters really built as full characters? And so we were doing it in Mexico, and we hosted a cocktail party for like 8 production companies in Mexico, and Netflix and Amazon and all these people. And we said, if you take these consultants into your writer's room, we'll give them to you for free. Will you do it? And in 6 months, 25 productions had taken them in. And those consultants, of course, were very good at being diplomatic on how to provide feedback, because if anyone is a writer here or has been in a writer's room, you know how careful that dynamics, how delicate the dynamics of those spaces are. But I think sometimes we presume that folks in commercial spaces wouldn't have appetite for things that are very much rooted in impact, and actually they do, and once they actually embark on that journey, they want to keep going. So thank you for sharing that. Victor, you were speaking about the kinds of partnerships that are necessary for large-scale impact, and I think you were framing it in the context of this is also a good investment and good business. And so considering that the World Bank works with governments and donors and funders, what do you think is that type of partnership that can make sure that we're building an ecosystem that is much more rooted on evidence and knowledge?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Felipe. So, no single organization can put together this big edutainment intervention and its evaluation. The case of like My Better World, the show was funded primarily by the International Development Agency of the UK, formerly DFID, currently FCDO. And it was a collaboration of top talent across many African countries to produce this Emmy Award-winning show. The World Bank and other development agencies and governments might not be systematically investing in such shows. However, a bread and butter investment is supporting community screenings or school screenings, right, in the space of HIV prevention, gender-based violence, girl education. So the delivery mechanism that reaches often many states is something that the World Bank can do. Give you an example here is, for example, right now the World Bank has this massive project in 21 states in Nigeria. It's a $1.2 billion investment where social and behavior change communications is at the core. The research, that's funded by the EU, the World Bank, research grants, the Norwegians. This gives you an idea about how many partners are needed. And something that I think the World Bank is really good at is its convening power, right? To bring a lot of these innovations, to test them, and in a second stage, scale them up, right? With the support, of course, of governments, foundations, and different development partners, and in this case, of course, the entertainment industry. Thank you.
Great. And Cici, you were talking about one of my favorite topics, which is infrastructure, narrative infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that for women in films, international approach is so important to go beyond just film-specific or project-specific funding and instead wanting to think about building industry infrastructure?
It's decolonizing the idea that we know what happens across the world. And so for me, I am Congolese. I was born in the Democratic Republic of Congo, but I lived in 7 different countries. And I will tell you that going into another country ever so often 2 years in your life, you realize, I don't know anything I thought I knew. And so that is our approach. Really get there, know who the people are, what makes up their industry, know, what is similar, what is different, what are methodologies and models that they use that make sense for their industry. I'll tell you this, and each country is different. When we encounter filmmakers in Nigeria is absolutely incredible, scrappy. Shout out to the Nigerians in the room, I see you in the back. But they're scrappy, they're incredible. They will make a film that in America takes 12 months. They will make that in a weekend. And they're just like let's go, like time is money. But when you go to Kenya is like their industry is slightly different because it's a lot of independent companies. And so for them, it's like, let's plan, let's put the system together, let's care about, this and that. And so again, the infrastructure for us was a way for us to A, understand, and then B, come to a point of service, but then also C, integrate them back into Hollywood. Because at the end of the day for us is to show them that what you're doing here is at a large scale and at the same quality as the rest of the world. You're not excluded from the world. You might be excluded because your infrastructure is not the same, your systems aren't the same, but they can be. You just need someone to come and to sit across the table from you and work with you. And so that is really why we care about infrastructure. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I think we so often talk about storytellers as architects of the future, but we can't really be architects of the future if we don't have the infrastructure necessary to sustain us and to scale. And so why is it that we believe the myth that telling important stories requires purely sacrifice? It can't be just that. It has to come alongside the support and the models that enable the creation of infrastructure that is scalable, representative, diverse, where people are taken care of, where they can take learnings and evidence and build upon it, where they can experiment with different models of financing, where they can have a slate of content, not just a singular project, where they can take parental leave and sick leave. And
can I actually say that it's also a wise business decision?
Yeah.
Like, I have the amount of money that I hear from other people on the ground who are like, yeah, we spent 10 million and then we can't do anything. And it's a smarter decision to understand first. And so for us, infrastructure is also at a point of educating ourselves so that we're not making big bets and then losing money. Because as Victor said, that 1 billion came from years of research, right? It came from years of figuring out this is the model, this is the idea, this is the direction. And so again, infrastructure is at the core of really understanding what you need to move forward. Yeah.
Great. So let's open it up. I'm going to make sure you get a mic if you have a question. And of course, appreciate you telling us your name and just getting right to your question. Yes, I see. I'll start here and then we'll go there. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Toby. I run the SAE Society. My question, I think, goes mostly for Victor, but I think could also be a larger one. So this return on the socioeconomic return on investment, right? Like 1 to 150. If you get 150x return as a venture capitalist, you're like the genius that will be lauded for all time. But for whatever reason, that seems not to be the case here. If I was a government and I know that I make a 1 to 150 and then that person pays 20% taxes, that's still like a 30x return. That's crazy. So why is not every government in the developing world saying, let's go for it? Like, this is an amazing investment. We'll make so much tax revenue if we just invest in these programs.
And I think let's hold your answer. Let's get all 3 questions and then we'll come back. So
that gives me time to think about an answer to this difficult question.
Why are governments dumb is basically the question.
I know.
Okay. So let's go to you in the back. Well, we do. I gotta say, Colombia, my own country, has figured this out and is doing incredible tax incentives that are creating so many jobs all of a sudden. But so not all governments, but yeah. Yes, tell us your name.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sheila Moravati. I'm the founder of Habits of Waste. This question is mainly for Joanna, but maybe others too. We work on taking, behavior on screen, and some of the challenges we have, even though we've seen such a huge impact when smoking was removed from television and film. I know that you guys have done some research on that and quantifying the impact it had of how much plastic there was on screen and what a difference it's making. Do you guys continue to measure that? Are you working with other nonprofits in that realm to show, again, that this actually works similar to smoking, and showing sustainable props and things like that as well?
Great, thank you for that. Let's finish this round of questions right here. Yes.
Hi, thank you so much, Margot Fonestock from Population Media Center. I have so many questions, but I'm going to try. Ceci, I might go to you. Wonderful. I love hearing from you. I'd love to chat with you. Is the work that you're doing, particularly in the African countries, going to include TV as well? Or is this only on film? Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Did you want to?
Yeah, I'm going to build on Toby's question around making the business case to media partners, and this is something I know that all of you think about a lot. And are there specific metrics? In other words, how do we get the proof to make a case? It's hard for governments and funders to buy into this with those kinds of returns. How do we get concrete evidence in addition to anecdotal evidence this actually works and makes good business sense for media companies?
Great. Thank you for those questions. So we have a question around returns and governments for Victor, one for Joanna, and then the final one for Ceci on the business case. So let's start with you, Victor.
Cool. Thanks, Toby, for your question. I think that there's a lot of inertia, right? Especially in bureaucracies. There's a lot of risk aversion, right? And this research helps to reduce that risk aversion, right, of bureaucrats to say, hey, it sounds crazy that we're asking you to shift some of your social behavior change communications of billboards and PSAs to soap operas, but hey, here's this research backing you up. Take that risk. Now, I think for them to take further risks, we also need to be thinking about new business models that help de-risk such projects for both the bureaucrat, but also for the private sector, right? Given that there's financial returns, but also social returns. The case of MTV Shuga, it was the most popular TV drama in South Africa, right? So it's not only good from a social, but also there's financial returns. So I think we need more public-private partnership that help de-risk such investments for benefit of both the public and the private sectors.
Can I add something in there? As someone who watched MTV Sugar as a child, I'm not going to age myself, but I watched it as a child, and something I wanted to add to that is also going back to infrastructure. These regions don't look at data in the way that we do. So the hardest part about getting the governments to understand the impact of these films and even to talk about tax incentives, I'll talk about Nigeria or even Kenya, or even where I'm from in the Congo, there is no idea what impact film, TV, or entertainment actually does. There's no trades, there's no data, you don't have an understanding. Yes, you can Google something, you will not find it. And so at the end of the day, why we also still go back to, like you said, cross-sector partnerships is because we have to then show them the data, create the proof to then go, here is a $6 trillion industry that you're missing out on because you do not know about this thing. They only know about sports. So again, the data is missing.
Joanna, let's come to you.
Yes, the Plastic Pollution Coalition report. That was such great work. We were so excited to do it. We're waiting for a second tranche of funding to move that forward. In the meantime, we've been doing a lot of work with Good Energy, which a lot of you probably know. The first report that came out was really about how underrepresented climate change is in storylines, given people's interest in the topic. Their stated longing for storylines that actually grapple with it. And next, we are doing with a series of funders really in-depth content analyses of reality show programming, scripted programming, everything that's on TV, in order to see exactly how not only climate change, but all of the behaviors that we can adopt in order to address it are being depicted in media, entertainment media. And it turns out that reality programming is an excellent place to do a lot of interventions that reach people across the aisle. So we're really, really hopeful that this kind of evidence-based, this formative research that we're doing about, okay, what's out there, will transition into a really effective outreach campaign that will reach the right people. Yeah.
And Cici, why don't you get us started on a final set of comments around kind of the business case and anything else you want to share, and then we'll wrap up there.
Oh, wow, put me on the spot. Okay, the business case. The business case for us really is, women in film has been around for 50 years, 50 plus years, 53 years. And something that I've seen across, and I've come from other parts of the industry. I worked in the agency side, I worked in the communication side, and of course, traveled around these different regions. And what I've seen is that we already have the proof. We have a reframe report that comes out every year. It came out, I believe, at the late end of 2025. And that report, I'll happy to share it with anyone who would like it. But what it showed us is that over the 100 top films that came out in 2025, the top 25% of them had more than 50% women behind the camera and made the most money across the board, TV and film. So I don't know what else I need to say for the business case other than read the report. And so really it is about promoting not just the good feeling of impact, but actually the metrics, right? I'll give you another example. Nia DaCosta, who's an incredible director, she has directed, I think, the most films of any Black woman across the past 8 years, which is a really hard thing to do. And to me, what that shows is she's directed everything from blockbusters to indie films. So what it shows me is we don't lack the knowledge or the skill to bring women to the forefront or to even create these narratives. And I know I'm harping a lot about women because WIF, but I also think with men and their stories, really, really important. So for me, it's like the business case is there. We just have to promote it more. We have to talk about it. Don't give up on that. I've been doing this for some time now, and yeah. I would say that's the business case.
Great. Victor, any quick final thought before we get kicked out of here?
Yeah. I guess it's the power of champions. Gates Foundation has been supporting a lot of our research, but also a lot of the key components of this ecosystem, right? In fact, all 4 of us here have benefited. We're Gates grantees. And I think we need more of such champions, right? In the US, abroad, because again, the challenges are big, and right now we're facing a very difficult time. So champions are much needed if we want to scale this up, because again, the humans understand the world through stories, and the more diverse, the more well done, more impactful this work will be. And for that, we need, again, innovative, scalable partnerships. Thank you.
Just to say that I think we all know the power of storytelling. A lot of people haven't really gotten that memo yet. It is the secret weapon, and it should not be secret anymore.
And I hope that you take away two things from this panel. Number one, chlamydia is bad. No chlamydia. Bad. And number two, that we need more evidence and more proof, but also we have some. And the one that we have suggests that there's a very clear investment opportunity across sectors for storytelling and narrative infrastructure around the world that is at the intersection of social impact and commerciality. And we hope that you remain engaged in this conversation, and I want to ask you to please help me thank the panelists for their contributions.